Hey everyone. Before I launch into what I want to say in the rest of this video, I just want to state up front that I'm a huge fan of Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, I participated in numerous campaigns, both as a player character and as a dungeon master, and I love D&D. But in recent years, I've come to realize that D&D has perpetuated a lot of unfair racial stereotypes. If you open up any D&D player's handbook, you'll find in the chapter on race, elves are portrayed as having generally a higher dexterity, dwarves have a higher constitution score, and halflings are typically shorter in stature, and the list goes on. And at first, I have to admit that I fell into that all too common trap of thinking that all half-orcs are chaotic evil, for example. But that was before I really got to know more half-orcs and started having in-game conversations with them. And I learned that we actually had a lot more in common than I previously thought, such as speaking in common. I discovered that a lot of my preconceived notions about race were fundamentally flawed. Not all elves are tall or have dark vision. Not all dwarves live underground. Not all hobbits have hairy feet. And I really started challenging many of the assumptions that I had previously made based solely on a character's race. I think we really need to stop the harmful practice of taking the human as default view on race in D&D. Nowadays, I'm always very careful. When I take on a new role in D&D, I make sure to only play human characters because I just don't think it's appropriate for me to portray a non-human character. I just don't have that same lived experience. So I can't really speak to what it's like to be a forest gnome and the struggles that gnomes face on a daily basis. I just can't know that. And I really shouldn't presume to speak on behalf of gnomes. Instead, I prefer to borrow from real-world ethnic and racial stereotypes when portraying human characters, oftentimes invoking an offensive accent or mannerism in doing so. I feel like that's less harmful than attempting to play a purely fictitious race at the risk of misrepresenting them. But race is not the only issue, okay? Despite the conspicuous lack of discussion surrounding gender, we really need to address the XP gap. It's a well-known fact that female characters earn 80 XP to every 100 XP that a male character makes at the same character level. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the preoccupation with racial division in D&D has clouded our perception of the real issue that we all need to unite behind, which is classism.